Welcome back to NutraPreneur, the hub for unveiling revolutionary insights into the nutraceutical industry. I'm your host, Bethany. Today, we're privileged to have Dr. Susan Hewlings, a true luminary in the fields of nutrition and scientific consulting, and the Vice President of Research Affairs for Radicle Science. With over 2 decades of experience, Dr. Hewlings has made significant contributions to the dietary supplement and medical industries, and we're excited to delve into her expertise. Thank you for joining us today, Susan.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so first off, could you share with our listeners your remarkable journey in nutrition and scientific consulting that's led you to become the Vice President of Research Affairs at Radicle Science?
Sure, yeah. So my background is I have a PhD in nutrition and a master's in exercise physiology and a bachelor's in food and nutrition, all from Florida State University. So got to give Florida State University a big shout out for having a huge part of my journey. And really the people that I encountered there have really helped me get to this place. A lot of great professors, of course, but also my fellow students, and they became mentors and colleagues, and it sort of evolved along the years. I've spent 20 plus years in academia. In fact, this is the first semester I haven't had a full-time academic appointment, so it's kind of weird. Started my career at Stetson University, and then UCF College of Medicine, University of Central Florida College of Medicine, where I had the amazing opportunity to contribute to helping integrate nutrition into developing the med school curriculum. From there, I went to teaching online for Central Michigan University. And in that process, it opened up a lot of doors for me. And I started seeing that the connection between academia and industry. And I started doing more and more consulting, a lot of writing. I really love to write. And there's a lot of really good stories alongside nutrition. And that's, I think, what led me down the road. I have a sports nutrition interest and passion, and of course, dietary supplements. I wrote a textbook, and my co-author, Dr. Dennis Medeiros, and I decided to include a chapter in it was an intro to nutrition textbook. And we included a chapter on dietary supplements. And everyone was like, oh, that's so like some people won't adopt your book because of it, because in traditional dietetics and nutrition, supplements kind of always got they don't really work. They're snake oil. And as I learned more and more about them, I realized, you know what, that's misinformation that's being given out. Dietary supplements absolutely are regulated. They're just regulated differently than drugs and over-the-counter medications. So that's what led me down the road. And I started my consulting business, Substantiation Sciences, with one of my Florida State colleagues. So over the years, I have done a lot of writing, a lot of substantiation. And I learned so much. I took a full-time position at NutraSource, which is a traditional CRO in our industry. And I learned so much from my colleagues in the regulatory space. So over the years, I just started piecing all the things together. And what that enabled me to do was really be able to connect science to marketing to sales. And I worked a lot with the different trade groups. I did the Vitamin D and Me project with NutraSource. So I got to see and NutraSource and CRN, sorry, that was a collaborative project. It's a CRN website. I got to see all the different sides of the industry. And I think that really is, to answer your question, that is really what brought me to the position I have now with Radicle Science as Vice President of Research Affairs, which might not even be a completely accurate title, because what I do there is really help to connect the marketing, the sales, and the science teams. So that's just a little bit about how I got there.
Yeah, that's great. And, you kind of already talked about it, but in your career, it's been kind of 2 parts. You contributed to both academia and the industry. So how has this dual perspective influenced your approach to research and evidence-based practices in the field of nutrition and supplements?
I really think it's enabled me to connect to them. A lot of times, especially in academia, the focus is on research, and research for the sake of progressing knowledge, which is not this certainly is very needed and not a bad thing. But what sometimes lacks is then the ability to take that science, take that knowledge, and connect it to applicable practice or evidence base. And I think with the evolution of scientific information, there comes a point where that's necessary to get it to that place. And with a decrease in funding and grants from government funding and private sources having decreased, we really do, more now than ever, have to make that connection to industry, because oftentimes that's what keeps the wheel going. They fund the research. And in the past, that was really frowned upon. It was like, oh, if industry is funding it, it must be biased and all this stuff. And I think that if you get good, solid, academic trained scientists that know the ethics, it doesn't have to be that way. We can kind of govern the gate, if you will, and make sure that even if things are industry funded, they're still ethical, they're sound, but they're also applicable and connected, and they support evidence-based. And I think having my foot in both arenas has helped me to be able to do that. And also the other aspect that's been helpful is being able to translate and say, okay, this is complicated scientific information. Like, what are they talking about? How, how does mitochondrial health, like, what does it mean? What is it? Just as an example. And being able to take that from a very technical science perspective and translate it to the layman, to the practitioner, and to the industry. Education allowed me to do that, because to be a good educator, you have to meet the student where they are, and you have a class full of students at different places. So to me, that's how it all came together.
Yeah, I think that's so important, just being able to educate people so they understand it. Because sometimes I think you review the research, you review these clinical studies, and it can be a bit confusing. So, really helping the consumers and the practitioners understand that is so important.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it helps from a regulatory perspective too, in compiling documents for like substantiation dossiers or GRAS or NDIs and those sort of regulatory documents as well.
Exactly. And, I think Radicle Science is pioneering a novel approach to clinical research. So, can you explain to us how this innovative model is redefining the way health and wellness products can prove their effectiveness beyond just the placebo effect?
Absolutely. I was intrigued about Radicle Science the minute that I heard about them. And then once I talked to their co-founders, Dr. Jeff Chen and Payleen Thorgood, their passion and interest for the topic in the field is like, it's addictive for sure. And what they've done, so Dr. Chen ran a cannabis research lab prior to COVID. And when COVID shut down the lab, he reached out to Payleen Thorgood, and they came up with this amazing idea. And the idea was, what if we could do clinical trials without have to worry about a lab or a clinic or an actual building? What about decentralized trials? And what if we made those decentralized trials? And by that, I mean virtual. Everything is done virtual. But if we made them so that they were affordable and faster. So like if we address all the barriers, so if we look at dietary supplements and we say, why aren't more companies, ingredients, why aren't more of them doing trials? Why are they relying on existing science only and not taking the next step to do their own trials? Well, they can be very costly, timely, and prohibitive. What if we came up with a way that didn't have to be that way? And that's what they did. So they came up with a model that is faster, cheaper, and more accessible. And in doing so, they also made sure that they increased diversity. One of the biggest challenges that we've looked at in developing products, whether they're dietary supplements like what Radicle tests, or even in medicines and over-the-counter drugs, is a lack of diversity in the trials. Historically, most of the trials have been done on white males. But the call has been from multiple government agencies, we have to increase diversity from ethnicities, races, gender, etc. So Radicle's model allows that to happen because they recruit subjects across the United States in all areas. So people that traditionally wouldn't have had access to a CRO, like in rural areas, or people who work people who have kids, they don't have time to go into the CRO and get work done. They can do these trials on their phone. They can do them, when they have a break from work, or their kids are napping, or whatever the case may be. And so Radicle provides randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials to everyone across the US to validate claims. And the other thing is, because of this model, they're able to have more people in each arm. So rather than just having a group of people taking a supplement that's like 50 people or 20 people, it's hard to get a real diverse sample when it's that small. What we do are very large trials, a minimum of 250 people per arm. So we really get to see, okay, what are the feedback from the participants? The other great thing is one of the things that's lacking in a lot of the studies, we have these great complicated scientific studies where we look at biomarkers, the mechanism of action, and cellular reactions, and they're intriguing and they're great for substantiation. But one thing they're missing is, did the people feel better? At Radicle, we're getting at, do the people taking the supplement feel better after they take it? So we're utilizing validated surveys that are asking the people who are taking it, how do you feel? Do you feel better? So if it's a sleep study, did you sleep better? Did you fall asleep faster? Did you stay asleep? And all these things. So it kind of addresses really all the gaps that we were seeing in substantiation in the dietary supplement space. And in addition, the trials are templated. And so what that means is it allows them to be less expensive, but then we can use AI to learn and to progress forward and to see, okay, we've done now 10 sleep studies. They have the exact same methodology. What can we learn from the participants that are seeking sleep supplements and are then, taking the various supplements that we're testing? And AI can really help us move that forward and learn more each time. We can recruit better, more diverse samples each and every time that we do a study.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because those traditional clinical trials really can be so expensive. And I think you do kind of miss out on particular individuals because, like you said, they just don't have the time to go and get, tested or do whatever is necessary. And so that's great that you're able to do that in this way. Would you mind
Right.
sharing with us some success stories or examples of how Radicle Science has delivered objective health outcome data across diverse conditions and populations, ultimately benefiting consumers and companies alike?
Well, absolutely. I'll use our recently published example. We just recently published in Nutrients, which is an open access journal, and I'll give you the link and you can share it. We just recently published a sleep study partnering with MD Bio Wellness, the doctor's brand, looking at their botanical blend with sleep. And so we found that the botanical blend, they compared two different versions of it, and the people taking their low THC, meaning like compliant THC version, saw an improvement in sleep over placebo. In addition, we have coming out very shortly, we're in the process of reviewing a study looking at CBN and sleep. So very similar botanical, a botanical blend in the cannabinoid space, but a little different of a blend. And the focus in both is on the effects of CBN and sleep. And my parents are about to walk in, so the dogs are going to bark. So just
That's okay. No worries.
just give me one. Oh, they didn't bark. Okay. So those are two examples. We partnered with a lot of big companies like Gaia Herbs in the space, and I can't really share detailed results from any of the trials with Gaia, but we have partnered and done several studies with them across our different templates. We don't just do sleep trials; we have other ones as well. I'll give them a second to walk in the door. But I'm sitting right by the door here on the port, so that's okay. Come on, Mangus. Good thing we're not live. I would have.
Yes.
Had we been live, I would have made sure I was in a different place.
No, you're fine.
So the other, aside from our sleep studies, I'll back up. Aside from our sleep studies, we have other templated designs. So, for example, we have energy, we have immunity, we have where we look at stress, and we have a study called Clarity, which looks at cognition. So we have a lot of, and more. We have a lot of different study designs. In addition, we have a project that we're looking at called Journey. And so you'll be seeing more about that, where we are really looking at the consumer responses. So not just the randomized clinical control trials, but consumer learning. So we have a lot of different things that we're doing to partner with brands and ingredients to support their efforts to provide more clinically supported supplements from ingredients, finished products, and also not just supporting marketing claims, but helping to support formulation. And so we allow brands to say, okay, well, I'm not 100% sure. We've done a lot of background research. We've looked at all these things from a mechanism of action, but we want to compare doses to make sure we get the exact same dose. Brands can do that with us as well. So we offer a lot of services to help brands have more scientifically sound finished products.
Yeah, that's great, because I think, especially with startups, I don't think they're always aware of the proper dosages that they should be using. They might be familiar with an ingredient and they might have studied that ingredient, but then they're not actually putting the correct amount in. So I think educating them on that is really important.
Well, exactly. And a lot of times companies formulate, and I've helped companies do this before, where you formulate a multi-ingredient product and there's a lot of existing literature on each individual ingredient. So you develop the dose based on that, but you're not sure what happens when you mix them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true from a efficacy and safety standpoint. And so the fact that our trials are so large, it also helps us to see if there's any common side effects that occur as well. So we can help look at those finished multi-ingredient products at an affordable price, because a lot of times by the time that you get through the formulation and the R&D process, you've invested quite a bit of money. So taking that final step is very important in looking at the multi-ingredient product.
This episode is brought to you by NutraPayments.com. If your business needs credit card processing that fully integrates with most major Nutra software platforms, offers the lowest industry prices, and has built-in features like recurring billing, $0 trials, and chargeback prevention, then visit us at NutraPayments.com for a free online quote. With your extensive background in pharmacokinetics and nutrition, how do you see Radicle Science's model influencing the future of personalized treatment plans and wellness product development?
I think Radicle it has just come on the scene like suddenly, quickly, just sort of like there's a gap and we filled it, and here we are.
Yes.
And it's been really exciting to be part of such a passionate group of people. And I think that they are raising the bar in so many different ways. And one way is to say, okay, well, here we've removed a big excuse for people, brands, of why they're not doing research on their finished products, that it's too expensive. Okay, check, excuse gone. Oh, it takes too long. Well, no, check. We took care of that too. So here we go. Is like we're raising the bar and saying, no, we can provide this. We're not replacing traditional CROs. We're not intending to. That was never the point. They still are very needed. We still need the very mechanistic research. We need the detailed blood draw type studies and biomarkers and pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamic type research. But this is how people feel. And the other example that I always say is this also will tell brands, okay, you have enough, maybe you think you have enough science to support your claim, but do you have enough to justify that, to say, yeah, people are going to buy it because it works? And then we can provide that step as well. So it helps not just from a substantiation point of view, it helps from an R&D, as I mentioned before, and it can also help companies if they need to go to investors, raise more money, take the next step, expand their market. Maybe they need to look into a different target audience or whatever it is to progress their brand. So I think that's it too. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also point out Radicle sets an example. They're a B Corp, and they set an example for how they treat their employees and just their overall giving back and environmental awareness, and the fact that you can actually very successfully run a tech-based, science-based company without any brick and mortar, because there is no, we're all virtual employees. We all live in different places, so that adds a nice little flair to a passionate group of people, and work hard, play hard sort of group, and it's a great place to work.
Yeah, it sounds like, Radicle just has come in and disrupted the industry, but in a very good way. So that's exciting. And you've talked a lot
Yeah, and I think
about,
when,
oh, go ahead.
sorry.
No, go
I think
ahead.
when they
Go
first come on the scene, there was a lot of doubt, right? Like,
ahead.
can you just do a virtual trial? Like, what about this, that, or the other thing? And I think that they've done a great job in embracing that skepticism and moving past it in a very quick period of time. And it's been, being someone who's been in the industry for a long time, it's been pretty cool to see that skepticism like switch really fast. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've talked a lot about substantiation, and I know that you support a lot of companies with their market launch strategies with scientific evidence. So, can you provide some insights into the importance of scientific substantiation for dietary supplements and health products that are in today's market?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of talk about substantiation since the FTC released their revised guidelines in December 2022. And ever since then, at every meeting I've been to, there's been great discussion surrounding it. And it's fantastic because, again, substantiation has always been there. They had a guidance that was out before. The responsible companies have always strived to utilize science in their R&D and substantiation process. And I think that the revised guidance has brought this increased level of awareness, brought it back to the forefront of a topic of conversation to say, hey, we are a regulated industry. Might not be the same way, but we are. And this is what we are requiring for substantiation. Now, the guidance isn't law, it's guidance, but responsible, it sets the bar for the industry that the responsible companies and the companies that want to really help people and provide scientifically backed products will follow the guidance. And that's the intention of the guidance. There's always going to be, the companies, the fly-by-nights that come in. And I think the other call for it is to bring the retailers up with it and to say, hey, like the Amazons and the Walmarts out there and stuff, like, you guys need to play a role in this too. And that's been part of what's come out over the 2023 is a real conversation surrounding what role are the retailers going to play in requiring the brands and ingredients have that substantiation and substantiation that is in line with the guidance. So I think that, substantiation plays a very important role from all aspects of the industry, so that it's not just the responsibility of the person creating and selling, but it's, selling to the final provider, but the final marketplace is also responsible. And there's a lot of discussion because there isn't like a very set, it's not like drug development where there's a very set stepwise, phase-wise regulatory checklist, if you will, to get to market. It's a little bit more vague, and that's where the discussion is. So, like, how many RCTs do you need? Can you rely on existing science? And I think that the general consensus is you need both. And it comes back to the conclusion being the totality of the evidence that was put forward in both the original FTC guidance and the current FDA guidance, where it talks about competent and reliable scientific evidence, and that you need competent and reliable scientific evidence behind each claim you make. And you need to have that pre-market. So when you know what you're going to what you're going to say when you go to market, you need to have that. And you need to make sure that you have that on all market sites, so that your website, your Instagram, your TikTok, everything, any influencers that you use, all that stuff, it all needs to be compliant with competent and reliable scientific information. No disease claims, no saying something you can't back. Now, what does it mean to substantiate it? What goes into a substantiation dossier? The totality of the evidence. So you put the when you put it together, you put the preclinical data in there, put the mechanism of action. If there's epidemiological data, you put it in there, and you review the appropriate existing science. So it has to be in the population you're selling it to for the condition, at the dose that you're selling it at. And then ideally, you do that clinical trial on your finished product. And that becomes the totality of the evidence. And you have that dossier completed by an expert in the field. And that's all part of the CARS. So that's a very important part of our industry that gets a lot of attention and focus, and rightfully so. And that's what protects the consumers. And we're seeing more and more also, of course, third-party certifications that look for the purity, look for to make sure that you have the amount you say that's in there, that you're regulatory compliant with overages and things like that. And the substantiation should also be part of that. And I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Absolutely. Those are all great points. And as you mentioned, even recently, I've seen a shift with retailers where they are looking for that substantiation, which is great. I think vetting the products that they're allowing coming into their stores is really important for consumers as well.
Absolutely. It's important for consumers. It's important for the retailer,
Mm-hmm.
From a litigation perspective, et cetera. And it helps to discourage the disreputable, potential for brands to come in or ingredients to come in that haven't been following any sort of substantiation guidance and just looking to make a buck kind of thing. So if we have those stop points at each level, from the notifying the FDA when you're going to market, what your marketing claims are going to be, all the way through to making sure your substantiation exists and is transparent, and then retailers requiring that is going to be huge. Every step along the way.
Absolutely. It just provides more confidence for them and for the buyers. So very important.
Consumers should definitely demand that as well.
Yes. And you mentioned earlier that you've done some writing. So you are the author of Nutrition, Real People, Real Choices. How do real world choices and consumer behavior impact the success and effectiveness of nutritional and dietary supplement products?
Well, I think the real world experience, is everything, and it is really what Radicle is trying to get at with our decentralized trials. So if we have people that are taking the supplements in their own home, in their own lifestyle, like, waking up at the time they normally wake up, in the environment that they normally wake up in, drinking the coffee at the normal time they drink, everything in their normal life, real world people, that's the people who are taking the supplements. So we're really getting an accurate depiction of, what a consumer who's going to be buying and taking that supplement is going to experience. And I think that's the big advantage of the real world trials that Radicle is conducting. And that gives an application. And like I said, that missing gap that we just didn't have in our industry to test it. Because if you're going into a clinic or a lab, it is disrupting your real world structure, especially for like a sleep study or something like that. This way, if we have people, assessing their sleep in their own bed, in their own schedule, eating the food they normally eat, it's much more, quote, real world applicable. We are also adding biomarkers to our studies, utilizing home kits, so that subjects will be able to add, let's say, I think I got muted. A call came in, to look at salivary cortisol in their own environment, waking up at the time they normally awake. So we're really getting very accurate real world results by doing that.
Yeah, that's great. And, talking about the future a bit, so looking ahead, What are the key trends and challenges you foresee in the nutraceutical industry, and how can companies adapt to stay at the forefront of science-based innovation?
I think there's a lot of really cool things going on right now. There'll always be challenges, but that doesn't mean challenges in a negative way. And I think looking at, of course, you can't talk about the future without mentioning AI and what role that'll play. Um, I think that's a good thing. I think that it'll allow consumers to look things up much faster, right? So, okay, I want to buy this product I'm looking at here in my brick and mortar retailer or my online retailer. Is it substantiated? Scan QR code, substantiation comes up, whatever that may be. Hey, Chat GPT, can you tell me if,
Mhm.
it'll be much more transparent? Potentially, I'm just guessing here because of course I think we're kind of already there. And then I think that the other interesting thing that's going on in our field right now is looking at the biologics industry and how we can use microbes and other things to create what was in the past maybe not sustainable, or in a resource we've maybe already tapped into. How can we create nutrients? How can we affect neurotransmitters? How can we utilize our gut microbes to produce certain things that normally we would have had, maybe not had access to, or would have been too expensive, cost prohibitive. Also looking at supply challenges. I think COVID brought to light an over reliance on, on China for production of a lot of our raw materials. How can we use biological science, biological engineering to circumvent that, get around that, and not be overly reliant on any one place to increase and maintain our supplies challenges? Those are just a few of the places. I think there's advancements in all different levels. The other thing, of course, is we are rapidly learning more and more about, the connection with the gut and every other area of the body. That sparked a whole area of research looking at also the gut brain axis, and opening up a lot of doors for people who have had challenges with mental health, but maybe went under the radar from a diagnosis. So, of course, in dietary supplements, we're not developing products for people with diagnoses because that becomes a drug or an over the counter. But there's this whole population of people, huge population of people globally that suffer from, just sort of subclinical, maybe anxiety, depression, mood challenges that we are learning more and more about, and how we can affect those through dietary supplements and other health practices, and the connection that the gut microbiome may have to that. And there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with looking at the microbiome and trying to get a picture, like, what is the difference between the microbiome of, if you look at fit biotics, and they're looking at what's the difference between the microbiome of an elite athlete and the average person, the unhealthy person, and how can we use the microbiome from the fit person and help change the unhealthy person, and those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of that sort of engineering and biologics going on that's super interesting. And of course, learning more and more about cellular health and how the mechanisms and health inside the cell then impact every other area of the body. And coming out of our silo perspective is going to be the huge thing, right? Looking more at the idea. And I think this is something that my entire career people have talked about, integrative health. But now we have like the technology where, again, back to the gut, looking at the gut and how it influences. It's making us look at, oh, well, everything is connected. So how can we develop products? How can we develop things that either impact one thing to create a cascade of health benefits, or target multiple areas at once? I think also the discussions that come to the forefront about the endocannabinoid system and the vitamin D receptors have helped us realize how interconnected all these things are.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. I feel like we could have a whole podcast on just gut health because of all of the new findings there are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And looking at metabolomics And I think personalized nutrition, I'd be remiss not to, the advancements being made, and this is an area that is beyond my training and expertise, but looking at genetic differences in metabolomics and nutrigenomics. And so when I first started talking about personalized nutrition in my graduate nutrition class, it was like, oh, we're a long way off from that. And every year we rapidly get closer to just being able to, okay, listen, just take a cheek swab, send it in, and we will send you an entire line of nutrition products just for you. And we are so close to that. And that's going to be a really cool thing. We no longer will need to be talking about averages for everything and hoping that the people taking our supplements are in those average groups. So it's fascinating times.
Yes, that's so neat. And, it's been really great speaking with you today. So once again, just thank you for joining us and giving us some background about Radicle Science and your role there and all of the other things that you've been able to discuss with us today. So as we
anybody in the audience, I want to add this, it would like to participate in a Radicle Science trial. If you want to be a participant, please go to our website and we'll provide a link, and you can fill out like a initial quick screening survey to see if you qualify for one of our studies. And it's easy. Again, you just do it on your phone. It's really cool to just kind of see how the process works. We'd love to have you participate. And you get a personalized health report at the end. So.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. I would maybe even be interested in doing that. So fantastic. Well, as we conclude this illuminating conversation, we've gained a profound understanding of the transformational impact of Radicle Science and Dr. Susan Hewlings' invaluable contributions to the nutraceutical and scientific communities. For our listeners interested in exploring the groundbreaking work of Radicle Science or connecting with Dr. Susan Hewlings, we'll provide the necessary links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us in celebrating the ever-evolving world of nutraceutical innovations on social media. Until our next episode, stay informed, inspired, and empowered.